I'd like to call this meeting to order. Roll call.
Mrs. Scott.
Here.
Mr. Brad Updegrove.
Here.
Mr. Roger Updegrove.
Here.
Mr. Zawada.
Here.
Mr. Brophy. Ms. Deeroff. Mrs. Kratz.
Here.
Ms. Nyman.
Here.
Mr. Panarello.
Here. Let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance in a moment of silence. The Board of School Directors held an executive session on Tuesday, March 11th, 2025. The topic was safety. The session lasted approximately 30 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Panarello. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Scott David Heiser, Superintendent of Schools here in the Boyertown Area School District. I'd like to welcome all of our guests here, both in person and those joining us virtually for this evening's Boyertown Area School District Committee of the Whole meeting of our Board of School Directors. I want to thank the Washington Elementary staff and students for hosting this evening's meeting, and also thank our support staff, IT staff, and Mrs. Allison Moyer, Communications Specialist, for their assistance in seeing that our setup this evening meets the needs of board members, our in-person audience, as well as our virtual listeners. Welcome to Washington Elementary. We're happy to be here for this evening for the last of this year's building visits. Many of you know Mrs. Lisa Dorenzo, Washington Elementary Building Principal. Lisa and her team will be spending some time this evening sharing with our board and community about an annual Washington Elementary literacy event, One School, One Book. The school has embraced this educator-created Read to Them program aimed at creating access to books and increasing family engagement, and have taken it one step further to include making an impact on their community. At this time, I would like to welcome Mrs. Dorenzo to the podium to introduce her team and share details about the program.
Thank you, Dr. David Heiser. Good evening. Welcome back to Washington. It's great to see you all on this spring-like evening. I am incredibly honored to introduce you in a couple minutes to my team. These ladies lead our One Book, One School initiative, and we're excited to share a little bit about that with you this evening. In the One Book, One School program, a book is chosen by a team of educators here in the building, approved by our Office of Teaching and Learning, and purchased by our generous PTO. A copy of the book is given to each and every student here at Washington. At school, students come together to celebrate and explore the novel with their teachers and peers. This powerful approach to reading instruction encourages family involvement, strengthens the link between a home and school community, and creates a genuine community of readers. At Washington, our readers eagerly look forward to this special event each year. Without further ado, I will introduce you to my team. I have Jessica Ramirez. She is one of the reading specialists here. I have Mrs. Tara Sartor. She holds two roles, reading specialist and interventionist, and Kelly Arnold is our interventionist. They're going to show a really sweet, adorable video starring some of our kids, and you'll feel the excitement of our One Book, One School initiative. So.
Thank you, Mrs. Dorenzo. We would like to thank the school board and the administration for giving us a few minutes of your time here tonight to highlight some of the amazing things that we do here at Washington to support literacy. We're excited to share with you now a video that we put together to give you a little glimpse into our One Book, One School initiative that happens every year. Read to Them is a company whose programs show schools and families the wide array of benefits that come from reading aloud together. A child's positive relationship with literacy provides the basis for a lifetime of learning. The school-wide reading programs support reading together at home and learning together at school by providing schools with the necessary tools, resources, and guidance to create a culture of literacy in our community. One of the programs that Read to Them offers is One Book, One School. We select a book, and each student in our school receives a copy to read at home as a family. At school, students explore the novel with their classmates, participating in daily trivia, fun spirit days, and community service. One Book, One School reinforces reading instruction, increases parental involvement, bridges the homeschool connection, and builds a true community of readers.
Bringing this program to Washington would not be possible without the help of our amazing PTO. Each year, they purchase all of the books and trivia prizes that we use for this event. We are incredibly grateful for our PTO's continued support of this initiative at Washington Elementary. One Book, One School is exciting. We love motivating our students to read by teasing what our book title will be, bringing mystery bags into the classroom to build excitement, and getting things started with a fun kickoff assembly. One Book, One School is engaging. Come to our building during this time and you'll see students getting off the bus with the book in their hand, discussing trivia questions in the hallway, begging to read the next chapter, and enjoying video read-alouds from our wonderful Washington staff.
Chapter 6, A Peanut Butter Sandwich. I told you to be careful, scolded Keith when his parents had gone to dress and Ralph had...
One Book, One School is about community. Not only do we build community by reading this book together as an entire school, but we also give back to the community with a service project related to our book. We have donated to Alex's lemonade stand while we read The Lemonade War, collected donations for Preston's Pantry to help bring food to those in need, just like Ralph Mouse in The Mouse and the Motorcycle, and held a penny war to benefit Penn State Hershey Children's Hospital when we read The Chocolate Touch. One Book, One School is fun. Each day we ask students trivia questions related to their reading, and teachers nominate students who answered correctly to take part in a prize drawing. Everyone looks forward to Friday when we spin the wheel for trivia prizes.
Waylon DeLong. Congratulations, Waylon.
Even our littlest learners get involved in the fun. And of course, One Book, One School is all about reading. Here are the books we have read as a school community over the years. The Mouse and the Motorcycle by Beverly Cleary. When Ralph the Mouse rode into Washington, teachers made the book come alive in their classrooms with exciting resources, videos, games, trivia, and dress-up days.
I'm not winding up with
The BFG by Roald Dahl. The big, friendly giant came to Washington with his enormous ears, nonsensical vocabulary, and jars full of dreams. We learned about the author, Roald Dahl, and how his incredible imagination brought the BFG to life. The Lemonade War by Jacqueline Davies. In The Lemonade War, siblings Evan and Jesse learn valuable lessons about themselves, their strengths, and how to learn from their mistakes. At Washington, we kicked off this book with a little lemonade war of our own. Students enjoyed some refreshing lemonade courtesy of our PTO and participated in a digital breakout room based on their comprehension of the book.
The Chocolate Touch by Patrick Skeen Catling. In The Chocolate Touch, John Midas learns that the only way to cure his chocolatitis is to think of others before himself, a valuable lesson for us all. Washington students showed how generous they could be, donating to a worthy cause with our penny wars. Students couldn't put this book down, and some of them carried 2 books at all times. Washington loves one book, one school. But don't take our word for it.
I read The Chocolate Touch with my whole family.
I like how there's a trivia question about every day about a book that we read.
Mrs. Ramirez picked very funny books.
What I like about One Book, One School is that when you guys pick a book, it's always like a different book. It's not like one that everybody knows, so it's fun to enjoy.
It's fun to read the book with my family.
I think I like the Lemonade Word and the Chocolate Touch because I personally love chocolate and lemonade. I just love the Chocolate Touch and the Lemonade Word because it was so fun reading it. What I like about One Book, One School is that each book teaches people lessons. So this year was the Chocolate Touch. So this, I liked it because it teaches you a lesson about not being greedy for stuff. What's next year's book gonna be? What's next year's book?
We're sad we won't be here for the book next year.
What will our book be next year? What will next year's book be?
What will be next year's book?
At Washington, we are so proud of our One Book, One School initiative. When a whole school reads a book, there's a lot to talk about.
So this year we read The Chocolate Touch, so you'll notice in front of you we gave you each a little chocolate touch, a little bit of chocolate for you to enjoy tonight. We thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to speak about it, and we welcome any questions you might have about this initiative at our school. Yes?
What is next year's book going to be?
We don't know yet, but I really do, it was clearly staged that we asked them that question to say that at the end, but they start asking on the first day of school, and they start asking again the day after we finish the book this year. So I've already been asked, and we won't decide until next year. We use the summer to read a couple choices and decide which suits our school best. All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Dorenzo. Thank you, team. And again, thank you to all the Washington Elementary students and staff for their participation. What a wonderful program. And it really does show. So thank you. Okay, that takes us down into our discussion and information section of the agenda this evening. We're going to kick off our first informational piece, item A, with our planetarium. If you recall, back during the February Committee of the Whole meeting, we shared some information regarding the planetarium. The board had a discussion in regards to that and charged me and administration to come back with furthering that discussion with some more information. So, as fortune would have it, shortly after that meeting, I was contacted by a planetarium consultant. And I'm going to introduce Ms. Joyce J.T. Town to the podium. And JT was fortunate enough to hear about through the media, and we're fortunate now through streaming and through media, the attention that that meeting got, and got JT's attention enough to reach out to me and asked if I would need any assistance. So we certainly took advantage of the opportunity to have JT. Mr. Stout and I had multiple conversations over the telephone with JT, and then invited her to come and visit the planetarium and talked a little bit about what some of the intentions and what some of the things that the board aspired to with regard to it. And so we ultimately asked JT to put together a needs assessment for us with regard to the planetarium, and this evening present some of those findings to the board and have an open discussion and any questions that we may have, as we have an expert on planetariums here before us this evening. Ms. Town?
Thank you, Dr. David Heiser. Although I don't know how I'm going to top that one book video that was just great, that we just saw. That was terrific. But I've been working in and with planetariums for my entire career, since I left my high school planetarium, which was a long, long time ago. I went to work for a museum planetarium the following year, and then I've never been without a job since then, which might be somewhat remarkable, but it was good news. These days I'm helping planetariums figure out their next move. Sometimes it's upgrading, and so I had the opportunity to go over and take a look at the planetarium, the Boyertown Planetarium. We happen to be in an area that's pretty replete with school planetariums. I did a count recently, and there are 42 operational school planetariums in Pennsylvania right now. And if you add the college and museum planetariums to that, it's about another 60% of that number. The reason for that is, back in the late 50s, when the Sputniks flew over, there was some fear and concern, and so the federal government put up a lot of money in 1958 to have schools put in laboratories for science and also or for language. And so a lot of schools took advantage of having a planetarium at that time. So there was 4 years of funding for school planetariums going into the 60s, and there was a few years of funding for public college planetariums. And then interest still continued well into the 70s and 80s. Through the 70s, up until the time your planetarium was built, the space program for NASA going to the moon was still operational, and so there was still a lot of great enthusiasm. Do I use this for going forward on my images? Yes. I'm trying side. Let's see. On would be good. Thank you. So anyway, a lot of schools were still teaching astronomy and space sciences well into the 70s and 80s before that subject started to fall out a little bit from the curriculum. But I took these pictures of the planetarium at Middle School East last week, and on the right side you can see the planetarium, the star instrument at the center of the room. It's still operational. It's from the Spitz Company over in Chadds Ford, and the Spitz Company in Chadds Ford is another reason why there's so many school planetariums in Pennsylvania and New York and the whole Northeast, and that's because they were the originally the only American manufacturer of planetariums. So when all of that government money became available for schools, the Spitz Company was really the only game in town, nearly the only one, for getting planetariums, and that's where this star projector at the center of the room came from, and it projects the stars as seen from Earth. And that's it. It projects 5 planet dots. So it's a little bit of a one-trick pony. In the 70s and 80s, teachers were eager to put up more kinds of visuals in the planetarium, so they added video projectors and a series of slide projectors around the edges for making a panorama, some other audio-visual devices, some special effects devices, and those were all in place here in this planetarium. And there's a stage where you see those steps on one side of the room. But basically, the room's in great condition. The projection dome, which is a real asset to your district, is in excellent condition. And it's really the dome that would allow future very engaging learning environment to be put into place. So, yeah, I give it a thumbs up. It's 33 feet in diameter. It's a good size, one of the biggest ones around. And all the safety features seem to be in place in that room. So I guess you have some choices coming up as to what to do with the space next. And some of your school neighbors have gone in the direction of upgrading their planetarium to full dome digital systems, in which case they might have more capability, certainly more capability for astronomy, but also they could have more capability for other subject areas, a lot of STEM science areas. And some of those places are Allentown schools, the Bethlehem Brockle Middle School, actually that was built from scratch, a new planetarium 10 years ago. The Elko, Myerstown School, Arcola Middle School in Eagleville, Methacton District, North Penn High School in Lansdale, Pottsville Area High School. All of these have upgraded to what we call a full dome planetarium, full dome digital system. And what this is 2 or 3 computers. You can see in this image on the right side, below the desk on the far right, there's 2 stacked computers there. And those computers are feeding data, images, beautiful shows to, in this case, one projector at the center, which is filling the entire dome with picture. So it's very low profile. It's nothing really mechanical there. There's no moving parts. It's controlled by a keyboard, monitor, and mouse, and sometimes a remote as well, so that you can be in different parts of the room. And it gives you it can give you a lot of versatility. This image here is from Westchester University, and here's another one I took about 15 years ago, because these digital planetariums came along about 23, 24 years ago, I'd say. And they're getting better and better. Just like all of our computers, all of our, video technology, or our TVs are getting better resolution, and so are these planetariums. So this one at Lebanon High School, you can see again a single projector at the center, and a little control desk with a computer there and the monitor. And here in this case, he has beautiful orbits showing there on the screen, nice bright image. So you might have the option then to cover many more topics. You don't have to stick with astronomy. You don't even have to do astronomy if you don't want to. Storytelling, multimedia, digital arts, even video game projects. Some of those could be done by students in other rooms in other areas, and then brought in and displayed onto the dome. So here's another site. This is showing a scene, a full dome scene of Stonehenge. And in the case of this one, you could overlay the stars, sun, and moon with it. You could run time forward and backward. You could see what is rising over certain stones here. And there's lots of other panoramas and scenes from around the world. You can also take your own panoramas. Multimedia, what we used to call slideshows, back when I had to produce them. Now they're either JPEGs or video files that will run all over the dome. So teachers and students can put together a multimedia show. It could be on the history of Gilbertsville. It could be on any topic you want that you have some images for. It could be the school yearbook. It could be, here's one here. This planetarium recently had an event where they put together a bunch of imagery for a career day, a college event. So the planetarium teacher was approached by another department teacher who said, hey, we'd like to do this. Planetarium teacher had time to put it together, because it does take time to bring these visual assets together, and made a one-day event with very compelling imagery for all these students that you see here in their dome theater. Geology, weather, climate, ocean and surface data, visualization. These are often built in to the software, depending on which type you get. World geography and maps. These still images that I'm showing you are really not the way to show you, because you can manipulate these. You can fly around objects in 3D. You can look at everything in the universe in 3 dimensions, and so it's much easier to visualize how things work. As well, you could fly through the human body. There are also dome documentary shows. They're like half-hour shows that have been pre-made. They run linearly, and you can order them up. Some are free, and some of them can be a few $1,000s. And those documentaries are great because they have a narration on them. Some schools, not so much in PA, but I've seen some schools who rely just on the documentary shows, and they really don't have their teachers using the interactive software at all. And that's one way to make things extremely easy, or easy for a substitute or to run, or if you have laryngitis. Here's a periodic table that is huge on the dome, and it's interactive. You click on the element that you're interested in, and then you get the screens of data. This one I think is beryllium, and then you get overhead, straight overhead, a 3D model of how that looks, that atom looks. So STEAM subjects galore, inquiry-based science, I mentioned visual arts, social studies also can be covered, storytelling, music, community engagement, and something called dome casting, which has to do with live events that are shared from another planetarium, or that you could share out to a planetarium in real time through the internet. So a lot more things are possible to do if you go in that direction. And I'm often asked about funding sources. I really don't know specific ones, but what I see most often are the Education Foundation, banks, or corporate donations. Sometimes those go along with naming rights for that learning space. Local or state grants. Federal is a little tough right now. And sometimes, like in the case of Westchester University, alumni donations could be had as well. So there's just some ideas. And I'd also like to suggest with this image that, you don't really have to call it a planetarium if you don't want to. If you don't want to do as much astronomy with it, you could call it something else. You could rebrand. And here in the purple lettering are some schools that rebranded their names. The Learning Dome is in Allentown schools. Brain Space is in Pittsburgh. The brown letters are college domes that took on another name. And the ones in black are their museum or other. And I threw the sphere on there in Las Vegas just for fun. But actually, the content for all of these places is like in some ways the same, in some ways shareable. And so if you have some digital domes, especially that have the same brand of projection system and software, you can do a certain amount of sharing. Not so much with the licensed shows, but with things that curriculum that you create, visuals on the dome, and programs that you create yourselves and that the other school creates, or the other facility, whatever it may be. And the reason to take a new name, could be to emphasize the multi-curricular subject area, so that there's not expectations of the people coming that they're going to see something on space. So, if they come in and you're running a show on biology and they just said, oh, I came all the way over, I thought this was a planetarium. And you get this great show on biology. Well, if you give it a different name, they're not going to always think that it's, that it's astronomy place. Also, you might attract teachers, students, and audiences that wouldn't go to a planetarium. You might want to change the name to lend an air of distinction, to show that it's innovative and experimental, and then that might even help you with attracting new funding sources. And in some cases, maybe not so much for a school district, but in some cases they might call it something else in order to charge for tickets for entrance. So that's the long and the short of it. I was wondering if there were questions that I could answer about any of that or something else.
Okay. In the schools that you've dealt with that have put these in, has there ever been any regrets? Did they put something in and it wasn't the right thing to do?
I wouldn't say there were regrets because of what they chose. I mean, there have been some things they wish they did differently. I was telling Dr. David Heiser about a school that wanted to have 15 teachers take the training on the planetarium software because they really thought all the 15 of them could do all the things, and it really didn't work out at all, and it was kind of a big mess, and it would be easier if there's one or two teachers who are in charge of it, and then if other teachers, come by and approach, ask for, a program that could work together, but in order to keep things working well and the doors locked and the equipment turned on and off at the right time, it's so that's something. I try to make sure the schools understand about any ongoing costs. And, when I came over to the middle school, these guys already knew about ongoing costs. So that wasn't a surprise. But, sometimes they're surprised that it's very software focused, that, you need somebody who's pretty good with working with software and computers, and that's it.
You could start, theoretically, you could start off smaller.
You really could, and you should start off smaller.
Smaller with just, if you want to call it a planetarium or a science center or a planetarium and science center, I'll leave naming rights to anybody that wants it. But you could start out with that, and then as you move forward, you could then grow the program.
You really could, because
and
all
it
of
sounds like there's a lot of different things out there.
And a lot of it's built in, but you don't want to say, sometimes it's overwhelming when they're taking the training and they're like, oh wow, there's this earth science and there's all of this and there's all the astronomy and how am I going to keep all of that straight? And maybe those aren't their own subject areas and they don't understand them. So you really do have to kind of take it in chunks.
But it's got a huge growth capability in it.
Yep.
Once you get it rolling and started.
Yep, that's right.
Then you become noticed that you have this, and then you can start moving forward with it and get more interest.
Yes.
Is that a good way to put it?
That's a good way to put it.
And there's a lot of software out there where you can build up your software library.
Yes.
And then slowly bring things along. Like you could start out, as a planetarium. Then all of a sudden you've got subjects, biology, that the biology department or geography department, I would think that you could forecast future events, astronomy-wise.
Oh, sure.
Past events.
Oh, absolutely.
So you could put in some things history-wise, some things geography-wise.
That's right.
Some things future-oriented. So it sounds like there's a huge capacity to make this what the right word is there, a keystone?
Yeah. And and I don't know if I mentioned that students learn the software pretty quickly too. And so even if they're involved for a year, they might be able to do a student project or take some of the burden off of the teachers by putting together some of the music or some of the visual assets for a show, and there's really nothing they can break. If they break the keyboard, just get a keyboard. So
You talk about clubs, astronomy club,
yeah,
music club. So you could actually, your clubs could actually use this and enhance what they're going. So you could incorporate it into many different things.
You could, and so your only limitation is, can the teacher be there to let them in? Does the teacher have time to take care of everybody and all?
Limitation's your imagination.
Yeah. Anything else?
I think one of the things that JT convinced Mr. Stout and I of was the uniqueness to the space, number one, right? And going through the components of it, how unique it was. And then also this idea of it being a learning space and not really pushing us into a corner in a dome. It's pretty impossible to push us into a corner. That was a joke.
No corners, get it.
But, that really we're looking for an individual, or we'd be looking for an individual that would assist teachers, really as almost a media specialist type of role that would be in there, not somebody necessarily that's a science certificated, or really somebody that can help with the software aspects to help assist teachers and students alike in there. Right, that kind of thing. There's purchasable programs. There's programs to which we could also make down the road. And that was a key, I think, when we sat and we discussed the elements to this. You can't make another one of those spaces, right? They were made for a reason at the time, and we still have those spaces. So I think that's key to that. And we went through some of the cost structures, and JT, you had gone through some of the cost structures as well for some of the things. So it's really dependent upon how much we want to bring this back to life. So it's cost dependent up front of those types of things that we want to do. If you want to include new lighting systems, if you'd like to include tearing out the carpet, if we want to include a modernization of the seating that's inside of that. Obviously, the projection system itself needs to be replaced, and we need we need servers to be able to run the necessary software. It's all those additional ancillary other items that we'd be presented with that are possibilities. Mr. Stout's had conversations. We do have some foundation representatives here this evening. He's had some conversations with the foundation, and their interest in assisting with some of the funding sources for it as well. So we see this as, it's really changed a little bit of my perspective with regard to it, and lending the credibility of an expert to come in and say, yeah, stop thinking of it necessarily as a planetarium any longer, and more of a learning space that's kind of unique is pretty positive component to that. So I'll leave it open for some other questions that the board may have.
Mr. Zawada.
Real quick, have you had discussions with the foundation on the particular unit they're thinking about purchasing?
Not yet.
Because what I'm trying to see is not, at this point, go in with the least expensive unit when there's more stuff that we can grow with.
Good, better, best.
Yeah.
Okay. We can cover that. Mm-hmm.
I think the one thing be expandable is, I think some of the units that were brought up were not expandable. Once you put them in, that was it. So of course they're the cheaper ones, which of course, that's how that works. But it would look like the expandable ones, even though there are more, would be the way to go. Also, through the state, there is state funding for this through the STEM grants, and we have a list of those of what we actually can go and get, and we also have some state representative backing to go after those grants. Should we move on them, which we would need to do that fairly soon. So, and I can talk to you about that if you need anything for me to tell you that. But there's interest there also. So there are some other funding sources. I'm sure we can look for naming. We can look. There's probably alumni here that would be glad to see the planetarium come back. There's got to be a lot of other different things out there we can bring forward to get this going, because I think it's everybody remembers it, and a lot of people want it back. So it behooves us to actually really take this seriously and grab it and do something with it.
Yeah, and I think one of the things our next step should be, if the board, and it sounded at the last meeting, and if that's still consistent for this meeting, that it does have interest in bringing this back. I think what we'll need to do is put together then a list, an itemized list of, and really just from JT's lens of being an expert in what it is, to really have a menu and to see how interested the Boyertown Educational Foundation may be with regard to a number of those things, and the board itself would be. We've made some suggestions on a few things that, we know we have some demolition in there. We have to get a lot of items. Believe it or not, there's a lot of stuff in there we need to get out of there. Mr. Stout and I were very surprised by what's inside of there, and so there is going to need time and energy to get a lot of the things out of there. There's going to need to be we talked about the resurfacing of the dome itself to encapsulate it as being a pretty important piece to that. Then outside of that, then it's what types of equipment do we want, and it's almost a menu list of how big and how bold you want to be with sound, lighting, projection, and I think JT to partner with her here in the immediate to be able to get some of those lists back and then get those things back to you, as well as some possible funding sources for some of those things would behoove the board. Ms. Nyman, I think you have a question.
I think we should definitely look into this, and I would like to see what kind of grant money is out there. There might be enough grant money to do a majority of everything, that we don't even have to go out and look for anything else, at least to get us started, to see if this can be brought back and accepted in the community, which I think it will from everything I've been hearing. But it would be a start to find out what grants are out there and how much they are and what we could get.
So I guess from the board's perspective, Mr. Panarello, are we pretty unanimous in terms of the board?
Yeah, I think the board would like to move forward.
Okay.
With it.
So I think what we will do, we will partner with Ms. Town in putting together an itemized list. We'll start to have some more conversations with the foundation as a possible funding source, and looking at some other things that we could link together with funding sources, get those back to you as soon as possible so that we can
Great. I'd love to be involved. And Mr. Brophy reminded me of something I'd wanted to say. One reason why people might remember that planetarium and want it back is that there was an award-winning teacher here for many years, and he received a very prestigious award from the Astronomical Society of the Pacific one year, which is only given out every 5 to 10 years to just the best educators, high school educators in the country. So that's a feather in the cap of this district as well. Yep. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, JT. Okay, that takes us down to item B, our Steeles Elementary Curriculum Resource Recommendations. So we have Mrs. Landis, our Director of Office of Teaching and Learning, and our Supervisor, Ms. Jen Joyce, here this evening to share some information. And I know board members had an opportunity to come in and view some of these curricular materials that you're going to be hearing about this evening.
Thank you. So you probably recall that last year we had come several times to you regarding the new Steele Science Standards. We had given you a two-part overview of what all those new standards entail, and you had approved our secondary curriculum materials last year. So we've been working with the elementary teachers. Sorry, I'm having the same trouble she did. We've been working on the elementary curriculum materials and with our teachers to recommend those items for you. So up here we just have a review of a few things. We had links on the first slide to the previous presentations for you to refer back to. And just a reminder here of the secondary Steeles resources that you had previously approved. We had the lab aids and the Savas at the high school, and as well as the middle school. And back in June of last year, you had approved those, and we still had ESSER funding available, and we were able to use those funds for the secondary materials. ESSER funding did end this past December, so we no longer have that funding available, so we would be looking to use our district budget through the Office of Teaching and Learning to pay for elementary needs. So we have some resources that we have been looking at with our elementary teachers over the past year or so. And mystery science is the one that has really risen to the forefront. We have some links there that have been shared with you previously to give you an opportunity to look at some of those things in some more detail. Mrs. Joyce has done a fabulous job working with our teachers and reviewing all of these materials and making these recommendations, and she's going to be sharing a little bit more detail with you in just a minute as to how these resources work and how they can be used in our classrooms to help our students become critical thinkers and explore new concepts in science. This slide should look familiar to you. We used a similar format last year when we did our secondary presentations for you and just looked at each resource in a couple different areas. First of all, is it aligned with the science standards? And yes, they are. There's not endorsements per se. There aren't any available, but we do know that there are several other local districts that are also planning to use mystery science or are already using mystery science. It does include that student phenomenon and that opportunity for students to explain their thinking and those design solutions, which we talked to you about last year, and those 3 dimensions of learning and integration of the science standards that we had talked about previously. It does have kindergarten through 5th grade coherence. We'll talk a little bit more about kindergarten and what that looks like at this point with a half-day program, and how that might change in the future if we should determined to move more to a full-day kindergarten. The assessments are aligned. It is accessible for all students. There's not differentiation included per se because of the accessibility of the program as a whole. It is really well designed so that all students can access learning through the materials that are provided. And there are certainly things that our teachers would do in the classrooms to make sure that everything is understandable and accessible for all of our students. There's a digital platform for teachers with the resources and so on available for them, but not a student digital platform. It is somewhat customizable. The teachers have some things that they're able to customize for themselves. It does not include professional learning. That's something that we've been working with our teachers on throughout the year this year to give them opportunities to dig into those materials more, look at the kits that come with them and the different resources and make sure that they have time together to collaborate and talk about science. I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Joyce now, and she's going to dig a little deeper with mystery science and tell you a little bit more about this program in particular.
So as we mentioned, our new standards, the SEALs, really encourage students to think and act like scientists. So we need to be in a place where our students are not only doing those hands-on pieces, but also are thinking about why are things happening. So when we're looking for a resource, we want to touch both ends of things. We want to make sure our students are experiencing things hands-on, but that critical thinking element is there. And how are you applying this understanding? Because that's really what the SEALs are asking our students to do, apply their thinking. It's not just memorize things, and there's an important element to those standards of basic understanding and knowledge, but it really does come down to how do you apply that thinking. So when we're looking at mystery science, it really does address both pieces of that for us. I wanted to walk you through, just as a reminder, what our students experience. I can't log in and share it. I was a little afraid, copyright-wise, of showing the live site to you. So I took some pictures just to show you a little piece of what it looks like. As a teacher, I log in and my credentials open up pretty much every unit and a lot of other resources within the site. This is a 2nd grade unit on plant adventures. And what we've turned on is what they call an anchor layer. This anchor layer really starts every unit with a burning question, if you will, this problem that students are presented with that then comes back throughout every lesson. So it kind of connects across all of the lessons and forces students to use what they've learned to circle back and revise their thinking, because that's what our scientists are doing. It's not, I have a problem, I try something, oh, we're solved. No, we have to dive deeply a little bit more. I might get more information and have more questions. I might revise my question a little bit and continue down that same path, or I change my avenue of research. So that's what our scientists do in real life, and that's what we show our students. We're constantly coming back to those thoughts, revising our thinking. When we go into the anchoring phenomenon, this was an example where students are shown Death Valley. I'm going to connect to our planetarium for a second here. So if you think of all those things that you saw in that presentation about what our planetarium could be turned into, on a much smaller scale, that's what Mystery Science is doing. We're showing some videos to kids. I can't send 500 second graders to Death Valley to experience the desert. That's not going to happen. But what we can do is show them what that looks like. So there's a short video for students to see what Death Valley National Park looks like. Then they walk them through, and there's a discussion point where we prompt you, okay, what do you notice? What do you see? What are you thinking? There's some turning and talking, so all students get engaged in that process. And you continue through the videos of, watching a video, seeing some things, having a discussion, engaging with each other with those questions. And then they throw at you, after seeing what this desert looks like, it doesn't always look this way though. Sometimes they have what's called a super bloom. And students are all of a sudden looking, wait, what? It's filled with flowers. Where did that come from? This is a desert. Again, those are not things we can have our students experience firsthand. This is the closest we can get for them. The next step in that process, then, we kind of release vocabulary. In a lot of programs, you'll hear about students earning vocabulary, because the vocabulary students need in these lessons is not something we just give out ahead of time that you memorize. We build context, we build understanding, and then we give you the label for that term. So in this case, they talk about how the desert was years and years, very dry, nothing growing, and then all of a sudden you have a few weeks of a super bloom. You go back to a dry desert that's empty and you don't see many living things. Several decades later, you might have another super bloom. That is then called a cycle. Kids are given that explanation, but we've developed that understanding. We've seen that happen through those videos. So now I have something to stick that word to, if you will, rather than I have a word floating around that I'm trying to stick it to something. We're giving them that experience and that understanding first. Kids then jump into a See, Think, Wonder chart, which is very routine. So our kids K through 5 experience that. It's a beautiful way for you to build consistency, but to also really drive students into engaging at their level. So in this case, in second grade, I can draw, I can write, but I'm going to record some of my thinking in some way. What did I see in this desert experience? What was I thinking about that? Why do I think that happened? And what am I wondering? Because questioning is the important part. We want our students to be curious, and we want them to start asking questions about science and wondering how things happen. The next phase from that, we have students at this level that would use a model, not necessarily create their own model. And when we say model in STEELS, we don't necessarily mean the diorama or a 3D piece that we're creating. It's a diagram. We're using a diagram to document our thinking. So again, at the second grade level, we might support that thinking with what you see in the bottom left there, where students were given, some of the information ahead of time, and they could fill in the information that was missing. Very developmentally appropriate for a second grade group. What I do love about just the routines in any of those STEELS aligned resources, but especially in Mystery Science, you're never just wrong. You always have a chance to come back and revise your thinking. So you make your thinking public. We talk about, well, what did you put here? What did you add? And as a group, when we hear that, I can then go back to my drawing and add things to it, because that's what we're focused on. Not being necessarily just right or wrong. It's how are you changing your thinking and how do you revise what you've done? So when we talk about that entry level for all kids, there it is. I'm not afraid of learning about science, trying to learn something new, because we're going to learn from each other, and we all have a chance to gather our thinking along the way. So this was just the opening anchoring phenomenon, and this is going to carry out throughout the rest of the lessons. I had the opportunity to watch this lesson in part with one of our second grade classrooms, and if you've ever had a classroom full of 7-year-olds in front of you, you'll know it can get very exciting, especially when you're doing science. But I will tell you, the students were locked in. The video started, the teacher was doing some of the discussions along the way, but they got to see about the koa tree, which primarily grows, I believe, in Hawaii, but then has mysteriously appeared halfway across the planet somewhere else. How did that happen? How did that possibly happen that we go from Hawaii all the way to this other island? And the kids are discussing this and wondering how that happened, what could possibly have gone on. The experiment itself had to do with seeds and their structure. Structure was a new word for them, and something, again, that was built into, we talk about the parts and the pieces and what it looks like, and then give that word structure. But they did 3 different experiments with different shapes. It was paper and paper clips. And to watch them stand like a tree and drop the seed and see how it traveled. And the teacher bringing back that, what is the structure of this seed that made it travel differently? The one you see there traveled like a maple leaf, you know how it spins? They were fascinated with how different each seed moved just by a different way of folding it. But when we move from that, then we go back to the end, we connect to the anchoring phenomenon. What did we learn about the way seeds travel and move that could help us understand why we get a super bloom every so often in the desert and not a regular occurrence? So again, having that little bit of understanding then come alongside of this bigger issue that we're trying to understand really does help create some critical thinking in the classroom and keep our students curious about the world around them and what's going on. So, and as you know, at the end of the day, as the kids are doing the experiment, they were so excited to do the next part. There was, you could hear a pin drop at times because they were so excited about it. It was amazing to watch how the kids really locked in and were engaged with what was going on. So I did collect some staff feedback. We've been piloting, we did an extended pilot this year to be sure this is what we wanted to use. We had about 77 total responses, but about 39 of the responses were from folks that had used full units. The other folks had used some of them or just engaged in some of the mini lessons. I will say, we'll talk about kindergarten a little bit more, but as a half-day program, doing full units is a real challenge right now in their schedule. So we have looked at those mini lessons, especially for kindergarten, to build up that understanding of science, but also honoring the fact that they're there for a very short time during the day. Overall, very positive responses. That alignment to the steels piece on the lower end is something I want to make sure that we keep looking at. I think that's more of an understanding on our end that we have to continue to grow, and as we learn more about steels and how things fit, there is an alignment guide that Mystery Science has put out showing how their lessons are aligned to PA steels, so we have that, but we'll continue to develop our understanding and find those matches. Student sense making, you know, the students are really the drivers here and in the driver's seat trying to make sense of what's happening, and that's what we want to see. Definitely high engagement with our students. The materials are very appropriate, and the opportunities for students to do something or show their thinking were very evident there. We do have some things we want to focus on in the future, though, some areas of growth. So artifacts of learning, how are we tracking and our students learning and showing that they are developing a science understanding. That is something we want to continue to monitor and make sure that we have the right pieces in place. That could be as simple as a science notebook, but those are all things we'll have to talk out ahead of time and figure out what we want that to look like. The teacher edition is a concern. When you're used to, you know, the big book that comes with things, that's not what happens here. This is a digital resource for teachers. So all of their access is digital, which is what makes it less impactful budget-wise. We're not purchasing massive teacher's manuals. We're not purchasing a bunch of student textbooks. So what we've resolved on that end is to go in and print out some of those things for teachers and almost make like a master copy for everyone so that it's there and available. But really, the digital piece is beautiful because you can access it anytime. It's wherever you are, you have your device, you can log in and access it to look at it. But we can resolve that piece of for teachers at least. Some of the additional questions we do have, you know, again, the number of student copies, you saw some of the student pages that were there. Those do not come with anything, so we would have to produce those. We again did talk about a student science notebook. I love the idea of a long-term, remnant of my understanding showing what we've learned all year, and that can absolutely be something we try to incorporate with our students. The time allotted for science lessons, we know in our 4th and 5th grade schedules, they definitely have more time than especially K, but our 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade. That tends to be closer to the 30-minute mark. We probably have about 40, 45 minutes, if not 60 in some of our schedules. It depends on the day and what's happening, because sometimes you can really push a little bit and have that full 60 minutes. It's usually closer to 40 or 45. That's a sweet spot right there for 4th and 5th grade when it comes to these lessons. For 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, we would like to make sure that that 30 minutes, if we can expand it closer to 40 and 45, the hard part there is, what do you take away from? Where does your time come from? And that's where we have to have some serious discussions over how do we, beg, borrow, and steal a few minutes from other places to try and get our science time in there. So that's a problem to be worked out, but we definitely want to take a look at that. Another concern that came out in the feedback was just the amount of prep time needed. At the elementary level, we go back to back. We teach everything, so I start my day and I have a prep and I do have lunch, but 9 times out of 10, our teachers are going from math right to science. There is no break in between those two content areas. So that's where it gets a little difficult to transition from one thing to the next, especially if there is some setup involved with science. And now that we do have some recess duty involved at our elementary level for teachers, that can be a little challenging. So there were some concerns about that, which is absolutely a concern we'd want to try and problem solve as best we can. But I wanted to make sure I mentioned those for us as grow-tos and questions that we will be looking into. Overall, I had just asked, is this the resource we want? I didn't have anyone say no, but with any resource, I tell staff all the time, there's no one thing we can purchase that is going to do everything we want it to do for all of our students across the board. That's impossible. So we always have to be looking at things and determining how do we have to modify, customize, and we have some customization we can do with Mystery Science for sure, but that is the upcoming work. If you approve this moving forward, some of the curriculum work would include what does the pacing look like and what things need to be customized, down to that anchor layer being on or off. It does make sense at times to have it turned off and that you're focused on the other lessons, which are very valuable and highly engaging as well. But for the sake of time, it might make more sense that the anchor layer is turned off for certain units. So those will be all of the pieces we need to work on coming up. I think this will show.
One of the things that we always look at when we're exploring different resources is the cost and the materials that are needed. So as Mrs. Joyce had shared, we don't have hardback student books. It is really the resources that we print out from the teacher platform and making those things accessible for students. So there is a cost to the platform. It's a per building cost, and that gives the teachers access to the lessons, those videos that Mrs. Joyce talked about, the materials, the assessments. We do have a discounted rate. We can order these materials through Discovery Ed with the BCIU. Discovery Ed is something that we've utilized here in the district for many years that provides great resources and videos and so on for our teachers. And so through Discovery Ed, through that contract, we're able to get discounted pricing through the BCIU. As I mentioned earlier, there are some other districts in our area that are using Mystery Science as well. And then there are mystery packs. These are the hands-on materials that are aligned for the grade level units. And at the present time, we would be looking at purchasing those for 1st through 5th grade. We did get some of those this year, and they're packaged very nicely. It makes it really easy for the teachers to open them up, and everything's really well organized for them. We had one grade level that we had to piece some things together ourselves because the packs weren't quite ready from the company yet, and we definitely saw a difference between the ones that we tried to put together ourselves versus the ones that they sent us. The ones that they sent us were fantastic. So you can see the yearly cost there for grades 1 through 5. And based on the number of students that we currently have in those grades, it comes out to a cost of about $25 per student. We have a list down below of the number of classrooms that we currently have in each of those grade levels 1 through 5. And we mentioned kindergarten a little bit previously. If we do determine in the future to move to full day kindergarten, then we would definitely recommend purchasing those kits for kindergarten as well. But again, at the present time with the half day program, we're really looking at some of those mini lessons that can be incorporated, but they just honestly don't have the time for those full-blown units and utilization of the kits. So the additional cost there to add on kindergarten is included there for future reference as well. In terms of next steps, we would hope that you would
vote on at our next meeting on March 25th. We would be seeking approval of this mystery science curriculum adoption and the materials purchase for this upcoming school year. As you may recall, this coming school year, the 25-26 school year, is the year that districts are required to implement the STEEL standards. We will be doing the practice PSSA assessment this spring. This is the first year that it's moving from 4th grade to 5th grade at the elementary school. Our students will be taking the science PSSA. It is aligned to the new STEEL standards, but because the standards are not mandated to be taught until next year, those scores will not count against us. We will be continuing to work on identifying required assessments, working with our teachers on professional learning days to collaboratively create rubrics and identify our pacing of those units and the things that come along with that. So that's some of the future work that would occur next school year as our teachers continue to dig in, and even a little bit at the end of this school year on our upcoming days. There are technology and engineering standards that are part of STEELS. That's our T&E in the acronym. As you know, at the middle school and high school level, we have tech ed courses that can help cover some of those standards. We don't have that at the elementary school, and 25% of the standards that are going to be assessed on the science PSSA will come from the technology and engineering standards. So that's an area that we need to keep an eye on. Not all of those standards are addressed in mystery science. An elementary school currently does not have a technology-focused special area class. So that's something that we'll need to monitor as we look at this first round of assessment data and see how our students perform on those particular areas and what we might need to do to better incorporate some of the technology and engineering pieces at the elementary level moving forward. Question, Mrs. Nyman?
Yes, just curious. What other schools are already using it, and have we checked with them to see if they're seeing anything that's missing or anything that's not what they thought it should be?
I think Fleetwood is one that we know is using it, and there's some others in the area that are looking to use it as well. There's also several that are using Open SciEd, which is one that we chose not to use last year. The feedback overall has been very positive. I know when I go to my monthly Berks County Curriculum Coordinator meetings, this is one of the areas that we talk about regularly, and mystery science comes up quite frequently with a lot of positive feedback. Yes. Any other questions?
Is there any downside to not having a digital platform for the kids?
I don't really foresee a downside. There's great graphic organizers that we can print out for students to use, and I think that's going to be more effective, particularly for our elementary students, to have that, right there in front of them. I think with the teacher platform, as you may have noticed on the examples that Mrs. Joyce provided, the videos are very short. That first one of the desert is only a minute long, so they have those short videos, and then again, there's really a lot of the discussion, the teacher facilitated conversations and discussion and so on that really helps the students to engage along with those hands-on activities from the experiments and the kits that they have. So I don't think there's really a downside to not having a digital platform for the students. I think that as the teachers get more and more comfortable with it, the teacher platform I think will be really helpful for the teachers. Mrs. Scott?
I don't really have a question. I just want to say that Mrs. Kratz went to view it, and I thought it was very good. I thought the resources were very complete for the teachers, and the lessons were very engaging. The kids are going to enjoy that because it looked like a lot of fun. And even the teachers, even though they don't have a textbook, it was explained to us that I would be the type that would want it on paper and go in and write my little notes on and everything, and that's easily done. They can copy each lesson, each unit, and so the student helps and instructional papers that they get as well, where they do all their questioning and their engaging piece of the curriculum is very good. So I was really pleased with it.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy?
Thanks for the presentation. Can I say that going to the Mystery Science STEELS program moves us away from the traditional question and answer format to a question, answer, and here's why that's the answer, and here's variations to that answer format.
And oftentimes question, answer, and then that answer generates a new question, and we're building upon our understanding and growing our learning as we go.
Right. Scientific theory at its best.
Yep,
Okay.
absolutely.
That sounds to me like a basic concept of the whole program, which I believe is a way to get to the thinking you're trying to get to.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
I do want to make one note here. If you recall, Mrs. Joyce will be moving on. This is her last week here in the district, and she will be moving on to the Berks County IU. I'm sure we'll be seeing some of her services in action with us on many of these other implementations of curriculum throughout the years to come, so we wish her the best. Okay, we're going to shift gears a little bit now to a facilities overview. Mr. Schill, our Director of Facilities, is here this evening. This kind of dovetails in as we've been talking budget. Mr. Schill is going to talk about some of the capital projects that we have on schedule, along with just a little background for the board to give a little baseline on a number of areas that his department touches and where we are with some of those needs at this point. Mr. Schill?
Good evening. You guys seen me up here, and usually I'm bringing problems. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Okay, good. Usually I'm up here telling you guys about problems or specific things, and today I want to give you an overview of pretty much the entire district and what facilities encompasses for our district. So, there we go. So I want to cover some staffing, our work order procedures, building conditions, capital projects for this year, security, which I have, Chief Bohm, who's going to speak a little bit on that, and our district vehicles. Starting out on our staffing, we have We have 6 full-time maintenance individuals of various trades, electrician, HVAC, carpentry, plumbing, 5 part-time custodial, 48 full-time custodial, 5 full-time groundskeepers, 1 supervisors, and 2 others, that's shipping and receiving, and my administrative assistant. Our maintenance positions, I showed you the different, or I just spoke about the different professions and the specialties, and there's a graphic of our work orders, so you can see where a lot of our work orders fall. Most of them are in preventive maintenance, and plumbing and HVAC are the 3 areas where we have the most work orders. Our custodial positions at the secondary buildings, there's 1 head custodian, 1 lead custodian on second shift, and then varying custodians per building, because it depends on square footage is how we staff the buildings. Our custodians clean between 15,000 to about 26,000 square feet each, which is about the standard. So we're right there in line. Our primary buildings have 1 head custodian and then just custodians. We do not have a lead custodian at those buildings. We have just started hiring in-house subs, which has turned out very well. We've had a lot of interest in that, so we actually brought some on board, and they're working very well to fill the vacations, sick time, and open positions we have in the department. So our work order system is basically a building generates a work order if they have doorknob that don't work, pipe that leaks. That is then sent to my office where the supervisor sees it, assigns it, and prioritizes it. We do between 2,500 and 3,000 of those a year, which is a large amount. Like I told you before, a lot of them are preventative maintenance as well for generators, changing filters, and that stuff. So we're trying to upkeep what we have as long with putting all the fires out that happen as they come across. We have 27% carpentry. Now, carpentry is deceiving because that's hardware, such as doorknobs, as well as, window latches, stuff like that. It's not carpentry like building cabinets. We used to do a lot of that. We have since stepped away from that because it's too time consuming. Plumbing's a big one. Our buildings are older. Plumbing, as it goes bad, we try to replace as much as possible to valves and sections of pipe that are leaking. Electrical, same thing. Some of our electric is tied together. We have older electric and newer electric. We're trying to slowly convert to newer services. And our custodial staff does a lot of our PMs. So in the summer, winter, and spring, we change filters in the univents. So that keeps our classrooms safe in air quality wise. In fact, our IAQ is very good. We got a very good letter from our testing service saying how good our air quality is in our classrooms for the equipment we have, because we're required to bring outside air in. It's a law. So we are filtering that air with MERV 10 filters, which is working very well. So. As far as our grounds crew, we have one head of grounds, and then we have a team of 4 others. We have shifted from building each having a grounds crew, which is what was in the past, to having one district grounds crew, which seems to have worked well, because when we have activities and events, they can work as a team to get ready for a baseball game, football game. We also have what's called the turf tank. Has anybody heard of that, a turf tank? So most of the districts in the area use them. It's a robot. It's really cool to come out and see. That lines the field for us. So we pick a point, and then it's satellite lay out the field, and I can't believe it because it's going like this, and it'll do a straight line. I'm impressed. So that has helped us out greatly. We do all the bushes, trees, landscaping. We do have a mowing company that does part of our grass. They do the high school, Cobrookdale, Supportive Service, West, and Boyertown L. So that gives our grounds crew the ability to take care of the other areas at the other buildings. And it's roughly 259 acres is what our district has. So it's quite a bit of land that we have. So we have 11 buildings. They cover 99 square miles. There are 3 stadiums. You have Memorial Stadium, Bear Stadium, and you have Bear Park, and 22 outbuildings that we take care of and maintain. So if you look at, I lost my papers here. Building conditions, this is the build dates and renovation dates. Now if you look, the buildings that we have were built a long time ago. Some of them in the 20s, some of them in the 50s, some of them, the newest is East at the 70s. A lot of renovations were done at the high school. But if you look at our elementary schools, it was like a lot of renovations were done in like the 90s region. I don't know if there was state money allocated at that point. I wasn't in this position at that time, or thinking about buildings actually at that time. So, but what we did when we renovated, we expanded a lot. So if you look at our district, we expanded on our buildings. So we really didn't gut them and rehab them and use the same structure. We built out, and we tied on to a lot of our older systems. So that's a challenge, trying to keep them working together. Like we have a lot of pneumatics, but we have a lot of like rooftop units. So if you know, those two really don't play nicely together. So some of those are challenges that our department faces. It's not as simple as going in and every school's the same. Everything's different. We have steam heat in some of the buildings. We have hot water. Same with air conditioning. We have chillers versus VRF units. So it's very, very broad. So we have roof ages and conditions. As you know, since I've been here, we've done a lot of the roofs. We've done Gilbertsville's roof. We've done Earl's roof. West and the high school were recently done with their renovations. Earl we did. So Cobrookdale, the roof is newer. The company that put it on went out of business, so the warranty went away. The roof is solid. We IR scanned it. It's just it doesn't have a warranty because Hickman went out of business. New Hanover is the roof that has the biggest deficit right now. It's on our capital project for this year. to re-scarify and coat. And then that will give us a warranty again on that. Middle School East is warranty expires 2026. We've scanned it. It's not in bad shape, but it's something we want to keep watching as it ages. Next, we have the heating system. It's not heating system. So we have other buildings owned by the district. I don't know. Go ahead. Did I skip one? I thought so. When I looked down, yeah. Thank you. I hard time to, it's hard for me to read the red. So heating systems. I told you a little bit about the heating systems where we have steam versus boilers, and we have fire tube boilers. This building has fire tube boilers. They're huge. If you ever see them, they're giant tube-looking things. They work really well, though. The ages are there. Most of our boilers are in good shape. It's some of the systems attached to them. Some of the piping and whatnot is getting older. So we're replacing it as we go. Once again, I told you guys about pneumatics. Pneumatics is slowly aging out. It's hard to get parts for it. So I have several companies coming in to give us quotes to get more to an electrical control versus a pneumatic control. Go ahead.
1972 install. Can you even get parts, especially if they're pneumatic?
Well, 1972 is the boiler for the fire tube boilers. Right. Those we are still able to get parts for. The problem is the FireEye controllers, which they have updated. Yeah. So they're like a card system, if you know, where they go through the safety features.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah. So we're able to get new FireEyes. Those are still made.
Okay, so you get new fire. You could probably get similar devices if you needed them, but
correct.
But the original, flapper nozzle pneumatics are getting
very hard to
find.
get.
That's why I'm concerned when I see 1972
correct
control system.
Well, like I said, with the fire tube boilers, they work off of a FireEye system, which is right on the boiler. The pneumatics is the classrooms, the temperatures and whatnot, the actuators and dampers.
So your feed valves and all aren't pneumatic?
They're all pneumatic.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But for the boiler, they're actually electronic.
Oh, they are? Okay.
We did new actuators and stuff, so all of that is run off of the pumps. The runaround pumps and stuff are all electrically controlled.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
With VFDs. So, like I said, we're updating as we can. The only building, which we've spoke a lot about, is Boyertown L with the electric resistant heat. And it works. It's just inefficient and it's aging. So that's one reason that we're looking to redo that building. So there's other buildings that the district owns that we maintain. We have Pine Forge Elementary School yet, even though we don't utilize it, we're still maintaining it as a district. We have the Supportive Service Building, which is where the buses are parked in my offices, the Education Center, and then we have the 410 Reading North Avenue building, which is, I took Mr. David Heiser there, and I think he thought I was going to leave him there. It's, if you want to video a haunted house, it's the place to go. How many of you have you guys ever seen this? Like any of you? It's right behind Cobrickdale on the alley. When you go back there, it was purchased in 2002, I believe. It has access to the high school property, and the plan for that Mrs. Denicola and I spoke about was taking it down. It's a block building. It's sitting there, and it's in really, really bad shape. So that's something we're going to look forward to doing. So that way.
And I believe, Mr. Shale, you had noted, I think the decision at the board during that time period to buy that's a 2-acre property, a pretty rectangular acre property from that lane all the way to the adjacent soccer field so I think there was thinking over time of access to that, and so it's just good for the board to know that it is a property that the district does own. It is a dilapidated building that we do have. It's certainly not a functional building or structure at this point in time.
Do we have any idea what the demolition cost would be?
In 2021, they looked into it, or 2020, they looked into it with EI Associates and came back with a report, but there was no cost involved. So we were looking to find someone to give us pricing on that. Yes. 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 It's the tar in the roof, to be specific. Yeah, tar in the roof. The tar in the roof is asbestos. Yeah. Nothing else they found. So some of the special conditions we have in this district are we have our own sewer plants, and we have our own water treatment plants, which is a very intensive license to get. And it's one of those things where we get mandates from the state, and we get treated as like we're a large utility company, which we're not. So costs on that can vary. Now, the PFOAs and the PFAs just came out, and if we get hit with those, we have to treat for it. So that's one of those things where it's a cost where we can never foresee what the DEP is going to throw at us. I know it's very costly to treat for PFOAs, so hopefully we didn't have to test because of the number of students we serve. So I think it's the next quarter we have to test. So my recommendation is if we can tie on public water, we should, whenever we can. So this leads us to capital projects for this year. So the first capital project is the YMC Squared at the high school, which is one of our chillers. They're a mag-bearing chiller. The motor, it levitates the compressor, and one of the levitation points failed. It's a sealed motor. There's nothing we can do to fix it. You can't rebuild it. It's sealed. So the whole motor has to be taken out and replaced, not rebuilt. The complexity of this repair, we would like to bring in the manufacturer to do it, because you don't want to, this is one of those where you don't want to bring somebody who doesn't know what they're doing and install the motor and wind up with more damage. Second, parking lot cracks. We would like to seal the parking lot cracks at Bash. We don't want to resurface the parking lots or the spots until the projects that are there happen or don't happen, because I don't want to put all that money into sealing and lining and then tear it up with equipment. Here at this building, Washington, the nurse suite access, currently students all have to funnel through the main office to get to the nurse's suite. With sick kids, whatnot, we'd like to make direct access into that nurse's suite so sick children are able to just get right into there, which would involve putting a doorway from the hall into that space. It makes sense, and I think what COVID taught us is that we want to be able to have ways of getting kids in and out. It will be on this side of the security door, so there would be no access from the main lobby. Also at this building, carpet replacement in the office. That was actually slated for last year. I kicked it to this year because it wasn't necessary, and I had higher priority things that took precedence, so I kicked it to this year. New Hanover, foam roof restoration. That is the contract, or the agreement is with Mr. Sultanic's, Attorney Sultanic's office right now, overseeing that. At Gilbertsville, gym floor tile replacement. That's the entire space, both cafeteria and the gym. It's a large space. The tiles are starting to pop off the actual concrete, so we need to replace them so that we don't get anybody hurt. Access road repaving at Gilbertsville. That's the road that goes back where the parent drop-off is. We never utilized it before. Now that the parents are driving on it daily, it's starting to beat on it, so that needs to be milled and overlaid. Over at Cobrickdale, the curb is cracked and falling apart at many spaces, so we're going to put new curbing in there so that students getting off the bus don't have to try to, go ahead.
The thing that, since I've been sitting on the board, and it seems to come up, but it never gets discussed, and it shouldn't be a major project, but our tennis courts. Mm-hmm. The amount of cracks and stuff. I mean, has that been brought up at all?
I have two contractors coming out to look at the tennis courts at East, because those are the ones that have the cracks on it. We've looked at with multiple vendors on the ones at the high school, and it's going to be very expensive to get rid of those little bit of divots that are in there. When I looked at the build sheet for those tennis courts, they are within spec. So they were supposed to have puddles. It was like it's just the way it was designed. No. But the ones at East, yes, they're cracked, and I do have individuals coming to give us quotes on that. That's more of a maintenance thing. I wasn't going to do that on capital projects. I was just going to do that out of the budget because it was just going to be filling cracks. Not the level of cracks that we're filling at the high school. So also we have same thing at the cafeteria at CES. The tiles are popping off. I don't know if they were done at the same time, if the VCT was replaced at the same time, but it's very odd. We have two gymnasiums having the exact same condition. So it's almost like the glue is letting go. At Earl, we have to replace a water softener. That would normally not be a big deal, but because it deals with the DEP, that's a larger item than just normally replacing a water softener. The Pine Forge, I apologize, that shouldn't be on here. We did that through maintenance through my budget currently, so that's getting done the first week in April, so that's not on here. So when we represent this to you guys for a vote, that will not be on there, okay? We're looking to add 50 additional cameras to our system because we found a lot of blind spots, and you really don't realize them until you start using the cameras where they are. So now that we've been in this a couple of years and, we've had a lot of incidences where we were like, oh, we're following the person and then all of a sudden they disappear. I went to each of the principals, asked them their wish list on cameras and toned that back a little bit. And we came up with a nice round number of 50 additional ones should cover most of our blind spots.
Do we have a printout or drawing of our camera and coverage area?
I do. I can provide that to you.
Okay, so you can actually, you have something you can actually use to walk around to judge your camera lenses and your...
Well, the drawings I have look like this, but I actually went to each camera, and I actually have a picture from each camera. Yeah. At some areas. Mostly that's exterior. Interior, we really try not to do overlap just because, the cameras are spaced. Yeah, for the number of space. What was that?
This is for Patty. Patty, the cameras, would they be coming out of our safety grant that we got, or?
At this point, we'd have to evaluate what we're breaking out for security and for the mental health supports. We'd evaluate that.
Because supposedly there's money sitting there, especially for safety.
Yep.
So another thing that we're looking to get is a portable chairlift for our stages. As you know, all the stages in the district don't really have wheelchair access, which it's never become an issue, but we want to prevent that. So they sell portable chairlifts, and we could bring them here, we could take them to Cobrookdale, we could take them to anywhere in the district. Same with graduation or wherever we would need them, or any kind of large event where it would allow us to provide everybody access. So that's on there. What's that? We should only need one because most activities are not on the same night. Like when we have concerts, they're not all at the same night. It's completely portable. You can put it on the back of a pickup truck. And we also have a box truck to move it. So like tonight, we could put it here for your event, and then tomorrow we could have it at Cobrookdale for an event, and then we can utilize it that way. And if there is a larger need, then we can always look at more than one. But I think one to start is a good thing to have. So now I'm going to turn this over to Chief Bohm to go over some of the security.
So just to be clear for Mr. Schill and for the board, these capital projects are what we have already proposed inside the budget and some of those projections for the 25-26 calendar year. So we wanted to detail out those and give an explanation to the board as to what's driving that $2.2 million capital project line item and such. So.
And we're going to break the roofing project out separate to the other ones just because of the cost of it. So that way, that'll be a separate vote from the others, correct, Dr. David Heiser?
Yes, we're going to want to do that, right.
Yeah.
The other capital projects will be captured inside if there is an affirmative on the budget when we do get to a final budget. Those will be affirmed through the vote of the budget itself, but we will certainly, due to the nature of that project and the cost of that, we want to single that out in a separate motion.
Okay.
Good evening. So when I took this position, one of the first things that I needed to do was find a way that we can have a quicker, more reliable access, a way to communicate with our law enforcement, police departments that are responding to any kind of emergency situation or critical incident that can happen. With the help of Chief Leatherman from Eastern Berks, he got me in contact with the Berks County Deputy Director of Communications, who then got me in contact with Montgomery County Communications. And with the support of all of our chiefs of police and the police departments that are in our community and surrounding, we now have and gotten permission to be on county radio. So if an incident would happen, my officers and I can communicate directly to a dispatcher that's on county radio, and we can talk amongst other officers that are responding to give them live feedback, information firsthand. So with that, we also have an increased number of your armed officers at your school district. We now have 4. 3 are district employees and 1 is a contractor. All 3 secondary schools have an officer assigned to them, middle school east, west, and the senior high. I cover all elementary schools. So our officers, we are all duly sworn police officers. We've all graduated the academy. We have all been sworn in by the courts that we make traffic and non-traffic arrests. They are citations, all are summary offenses, and about it. So, in addition to just writing citations, we also teach internet safety, cyberbullying, and the dangers of vaping, but we also look at it from a law enforcement aspect. You know, what are the crimes? What are the punishments? What can you be arrested and charged for if you do these things? Now, last school year, our officers wrote the 23-24 school year. We had 66 arrests in Berks County and 47 in Montgomery County. This year, only from August to February 4th, Berks County, we have 72 arrests, and there's about 10 that were undocketed, so those we're not counting right now. But from August until March, we had 72 in Berks and 10 in Montgomery County. So we're busy. We're very busy with what we're doing. And we're teaching classes. We're also mentoring the younger children, and we're helping them. Some of our officers were coaches, and we're trying to build a connection with the kids and help them get through some of these tough times with them. Also, part of our job is helping Scott with the physical assessment criteria, which is right now we're looking at finishing the Tier 1 assessments through the state, which is the Tier 1, 2, and 3. Tier 1 is basically your baseline for school safety. We look at a building and see what its vulnerabilities are, and we go by the state regulations and what was required by us to have these things taken care of. One of which is having parking lots numbered and signed, so emergency personnel coming, they would know, go to parking lot 1 or 2. We're also going to have any building or any classroom that has windows, there's going to be exterior numbers need to be put on those. So again, emergency response coming, they know it's classroom 22, and there's either a victim in there or that is where the subject is in. Bollards are going to be put in place, and barriers where a vehicle can access the building either by accident or intentionally. Those are all projects that are going to be put up in place shortly in the near future. We also started the School Safe Community Council, where we have local law enforcement, our chiefs, sergeants, anyone who can come, and all of our district leaders working together. We all have the inside of the building and the outside with the police departments. We work together, and we've come up with some fantastic ideas, and that's all we got right now.
So I can't emphasize enough for the board, Officer Bohm's first bullet of two-way communication between the counties and the district. That is a struggle between that police departments themselves have. They really don't connect outside of one another, absent of their own personal cell phones. So our ability to connect that for Berks and Montgomery has really been, and for Berks, has been really helpful. We believe is going to be truly helpful in just a smoother communication system to emergency responses. So I really do want to highlight that. And in the era of which we are currently in school safety, our ability to have armed officers at our 4 secondary buildings, for Officer Bohm to be able to assist in getting around to our 6 elementary schools is fantastic. I do believe, and so a lot of the feedback I've heard from our families, from our students, is that his visibility, along with all of our other officers and security folks, does lead in a feeling of it being safer while arrests or citations are up. Can you outline what are a majority of those citations that you're seeing right now, from a general sense, Officer Bone?
Just for Berks County, last year's number 1 arrests were 21 disorderly conducts. This year for Berks County, disorderly conducts are down to 4. It is our tobacco use is up to 42 this year. And that's only not even the whole year. This was just from August to the first week into March. And Montgomery County, last year disorderly conducts were up. This year they're down. All their numbers are down this year in Montgomery County.
Yeah, so we have seen a significant rise in, and there's an ebb and flow often with vapes, and we have seen a significant increase on that, and a more vigilant approach. We have a number of security at the high school, and with our SPOs being there, have taken a hard line with regard to those. So does account for some of those pieces as well. So thank you, Officer Bone.
Officer Bone, excuse me, real quick. Does that inside the buildings or is that outside the buildings, the smoking?
All these arrests have been inside the buildings. We do arrest outside, but we have not had to.
So to follow up with that, the bollards and barriers we got through the PCCD grant. So they are in process. We're going to start beginning of June, starting to put some of those in, install some. We had half done for this year and half done for next year. So that is going to be coming to completion hopefully over the summer. If I can get them here like July and August for the next year portion, I'm going to try. So.
Have you figured out where you want to place them yet?
Yes, we have them. They're 5.5 foot centers, so that's smaller than a car can fit through. We looked at all first story entranceways, so anywhere that some of our buildings have steps going up to the front offices and whatnot, so we didn't put them there. We put them more on the areas where a car could come in. Boyertown L was the biggest because, as you know, that's all flat on the whole side of the parking lot.
Can we get a look?
Yeah, absolutely, I can give you that. So next, we want to cover district vehicles. We have 24 district-owned vehicles that fall under the facilities department. We have 8 maintenance trucks, 4 passenger vans, 2 security vans, 2 dump trucks, box truck, multi-use van, and 4 grounds trucks. So those are, we replaced some in 2019. Mileage-wise, most of our trucks don't have a lot of mileage. It's the age of the vehicles that usually gets us. So Ms. Denicola and myself are looking at an ongoing replacement plan for those vehicles, and I'll present that once we finalize how we want to go about replacing them. But that's the list of vehicles that we have. Any questions on anything I went over? I know it was a large variety of things. Yes?
Which is the van that has been sitting back at the garage in New Berlinville for at least 3 months now.
That was the old courier van, so that was the multi-use van.
Why
It
are we
has a
sitting
fuel- It has a fuel pump problem where the fuel filter broke off of the receiver, the screw-in part, and because of the age of the van, he was unable to get it. So he's going to try to modify it and get it to work. The van itself, there is no issue. It's just that fuel line rotted and the fuel filter portion broke. And there was one in Germany or something, he told me, but wasn't able to get it. It's sitting at Monero's Service Center. But that's one of those vans we use for the grounds, like if we have to move paint, or if we have it for the paint crew as well. That's the multi-use van. It's not for student use at all. Go ahead.
And your assistant, what does he do during the day?
The supervisor, he goes job site to job site and makes sure that they have what they need, they're doing what they're supposed to, and gives a hand where, once again, we have 6 people, which does not give, if we're running lines, somebody has to feed lines. So either I'll be at a job site, he'll be at a job site trying to help our guys with whatever the job is. He's also ordering parts, so our guys don't have to take the time to try to find best price, because we're always trying to find best price.
Any thoughts on possibly marking one of those security vehicles?
We have 2 of them marked with school
Lights?
police.
Okay. And lights?
They do not have
Light package?
lights at the
So, just my thoughts, for Officer Bohm, who's covering all the elementary schools, it's impossible for him to react to a critical incident in a timely fashion if he doesn't have lights. So at least his vehicle should have lights. That's just my opinion, but
we were going to we looked at some actual police vehicles.
Light packages are not that expensive.
Yeah. Well, if we can fit his van, we can look at that to fit his van with lights. Listen, I was going to give him an 18 van, and he didn't want it. So he's happy with the minivan. So any other questions? All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Scheel. And I'll tell you what, while you're still at the podium, why don't you make our next introduction, and we're going to invite Mr. Lynch up just to talk a little bit about some of the proposed services for design and construction that are here in front of the board this evening. Scott, maybe you want to highlight some of those, but certainly invite Mr. Lynch up to the podium with you.
Sure. So the board had instructed the administration to look at multiple avenues on how to repair Boyertown L's heating system. It's a very unique system because each room has its own heating package and cooling package. So they're basically almost like a hotel. It does everything in the wall, which is very unusual in buildings of our size, because usually you have a centralized heating system, which all the other buildings do. So we partnered with CHA to give you guys that study on the best ways to proceed. They've given us a study, we presented the results, and now we would like to move forward on to the next step. So he's going to give you a proposal of services that they're willing to do for the district for your guys' approval. Okay, and without further ado, Mr. Lynch.
Thank you, Mr. Lynch. Not to put you on the spot, but just to go over some of the highlights of the proposed services that you have here.
Good evening. Thank you very much for the invitation. I do not have a 75-slide PowerPoint presentation for you this evening. You'll be happy to hear. We did that last month when I had my staff here, and we went through the various options that were looked at as part of the study. And the long and short is that a VRF system is proposed, something that the district has familiarity with. We have added the large box spaces in the elementary school as requested. We're also replacing pneumatics with a fully automated ATC system. And then we have also replaced the gear, the electrical switch gear, and the emergency generator. Also, as a part of the package, the roof is going to be replaced. So this would be a project that would be designed between now and about the end of the year. Then we would bid it publicly, and the construction is proposed to be accomplished over the course of 2 summers. So it would only be done when the building is vacant of students, and we think that we have more than adequate time to do it during the 2 summers. So that's the long and short of it. The proposal has been in your hands. I've worked with Mr. Sultanic's office on the scope, and I believe that we're ready to proceed with your blessing.
Any questions from the board with regard to the scope of services?
When I read this, I'm seeing 11.2 million on the proposal here, but I saw 15 million on the original proposal. I'm just trying to distinguish what the differences are.
So I think we're talking about the cost estimate for the project.
Right.
So the total project cost is estimated with construction cost and soft costs. Soft costs are permit fees, et cetera. The design cost is estimated about $15 million. And that was up from $12 million when we added the big box spaces. So total project cost, think $15 million. Our proposal is roughly 7% for the design and construction administration of the project. And one note that the solicitor's office brought up is they wanted to know how much time would we spend on site during construction. And that's for full-time observation on your behalf to manage the contractors during that time frame. Both summers will be relatively intense as far as getting work in, but the purpose is to get it designed early, get it bid early, give the contractors time for procurement for equipment, because you've heard all of the stories about switchgear and generators, and be on time for delivery while the students aren't in those 2 summers. So that's the game plan.
Okay, so your project manager and construction manager would be here full-time with them as overseeing your secondary contractor?
Correct.
But like I said, I see 11.2. Where's the difference come in?
I'm sorry, I'm not exactly sure where the 11.2 million.
Section 1 general, the approximate construction cost of this project is estimated to be 11.2 million.
Oh, I apologize. So the image that's shown is the original proposal that was provided back in February, and I've since revised the proposal based on the addition of the big box spaces.
Okay, so that should be 15.
So that should be 15. The solicitor's office has asked me for a revised proposal, which we put together, and I'll make sure that that number is corrected in accordance with your question.
Okay,
thank you.
And I'll make sure I get that updated proposal number to the board as well. So with regard to this, this is the proposed services. What we would like to bring to the board at the March 25th is an agreement. And
One
that's,
other question, Dr.
Oh, I'm sorry.
David-Heiser.
Yeah, you're going to be the project manager, and you're going to be everything.
We're going to do the design and provide the construction administration, yes.
We had that in the past, and that didn't work very well.
Okay.
So I'm against that part of it.
Ms. Nyman, can you share a little bit of what your experience was, I guess, so that maybe Mr. Lynch can speak to that as to what their services provide?
I believe it was by D. Huey, if I'm correct. Am I Mr. Brophy? That was D. Huey. You did everything, and that's where we had issues. Over at the high school.
Which project?
The high school.
A high school renovation designed by KCBA, and we were the construction manager.
And that's where the tennis courts fell apart, and we complained about those tennis courts from day one, that they were not right. And yet here we are, we still have water on them, and we're stuck with them.
You got that?
Yeah, so I researched that because I've heard it. So it was brought to the board's attention at that time that the tennis courts were not done correctly, and they accepted a $33,000 cut in the price of the project to compensate for that instead of correcting it. So that was the choice of the board at that time. That was neither D. Huey's problem or decision to do that, nor Stubner. That was something between. Once again, I wasn't here, so I'm telling you what was on the paperwork that I have.
Well, I would prefer two separate. so we don't have this issue ever again.
Yeah.
I think what,
If I could just add from what Mr. Shield has researched, it was a former employee of the district that made a recommendation to the board that the board followed. It was not Dewey's recommendation, it was an individual employee's recommendation. I don't know if that helps explain what might have occurred.
That's correct. Ms. Denicola is correct.
no, that's not what I'm looking. Usually, like, you as the construction company, which is what you are, you're designing, would deal with someone from the district who would be the project manager for the district. It would act as the interface between you and the district. And I don't see that. I don't know if you're gonna act as the district project manager, and if so,
In
are
the
you
past, we
comfortable in
hired
that
Fidavia.
position?
We hired Fidavia for the past projects.
Well, I don't see that anywhere, that we're gonna have a district project manager, because that's the process. And I saw a design team, district design team, and I didn't know who that referred to when I read it. You would meet with the district design team for
Well, as far as executing the design,
yeah, and I don't know who that means. That's,
so we would report to Scott,
Okay.
right, as the district contact. So all of the design meetings would be Scott with,
but that would make him the district project manager. Is that the direction we're going? I'm just asking the question.
So I don't know that we have a district project manager. They would report as the facilities director. Through this proposal, the services are provided that Dewey is providing is the design, right? They did the study. They've completed the study. So from that, this proposal allows CHA/Dewey to design then the needs, and as such then becomes the contract manager on site. So they prepare the bid documents, right, for the projects to go out, and then have oversight of the project throughout its entirety, reporting to the director of facilities.
So that's what I'm getting at. Are we gonna have the director of facilities who's gonna act as like our project manager for it? Because this isn't you guys. I mean, you have your own chain of command and organization, but you're responsible to DUI as you report to and who employs you. As far as who's responsible for the district side.
That would be the director of facilities.
But I'm saying it's, as far as project management experience, does Scott have that, or should we be looking at somehow to help him, or to look outside for a project manager that would work for the district specifically as a liaison between the contract companies and the district? I'm only saying that because I really still don't know how we managed the $60 million in 2014, 2015, when we spent all that for all the, and you weren't, I don't think you were even here, how we managed all that through, because I don't even know if we had anybody on the district side that was working that way. So I just want an accounting of how the dollars are gonna go from someone that's responsible for it on the district side, and I also at the same time don't want to hang Scott out to dry on this.
Yeah,
So I've overseen roofing projects in the district, and the HVAC portion is similar to what we did in 2019, 2020.
But you're doing a $15 million project manager for a $15 million project. It's a little bit different.
So Dewey works on behalf of the school district, right? So they're their own entity, but they're working on behalf as a client service. So they're working in conjunction with our facilities department and our business office in relatable billings, in all the payroll status as prevailing wages, and working through all the components to it. And I can speak from experience from Dewey and just recently working on a former project at a former school district on a $70 million. They were the design and construction management company that worked directly with our director of facilities and worked with our business manager in managing that. I have great confidence in a project of this size that between Dewey and our Director of Facilities, Mr. Shield, that can be managed, and Mrs. Denicola, that can be managed appropriately.
I'm just looking for, we have a
Yeah.
point of contact. Scott's going to be,
Right.
because I don't think that was pointed out in our last big project, that there was ever a point of contact ever really designated.
Yep.
And if Scott is going to be the point of
He would be.
contact, then that answers that question, but I still don't, who's the design committee? Would that be Scott and?
It would be Scott. That would be Scott, the building administration at Boyertown Elementary. It would involve various components from personnel at the district office as well, Mrs. Denicola, myself, Mr. Stout, and such.
We should identify that, though, somewhere in the organizational chart of this building, of this, this project.
I'm happy to do that, and ultimately, I'm reporting to you, the board, and to the community. So you'll see me. I'm the business practice leader for CHA in Pennsylvania.
Oh, yeah.
And I have my team. If you invite me back, I'll present as often as you like on the status of the project, especially as we get ready for each of these summers of construction.
And I'm just looking for the organizational portion of it, because your side of the organization seems to be clearly defined. I think our side of the organization also has to be clearly defined so that we know who's working with who. And if I have a question at some time, I wouldn't go to you, I would go to
I'm happy to help with the team in order to do that,
yeah,
make it very clear.
You don't want me to be coming to you, but believe me, you don't want me to be coming to you with questions. So who would I go to on our side with the question to get the answer? And I don't want to cross those lines because I don't think it's appropriate for me to do that. So I'm just looking for an organizational chart of the construction project on the Boyertown side, the same as you have on your side.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we can list that out in an updated proposal for that.
That makes sense. I mean, I'm not being too obtuse with this.
Nope.
Okay.
Every question can come to me, and if I don't have the answer, we're going to go to Mr. Shield, and we'll work down that chart. Absolutely.
That's fine.
I do work with Jamie's team right now.
Well, yeah, you would continue. Yeah, that doesn't stop all this. It just means I don't go there. I go there or there, wherever I'm designing on this side.
So what I would ask is Mr. Lynch, Mr. Shield, if you can get this updated proposal, and also outlines both of those teams inside of it, so I can get that to the board. What we will plan to do for the 25th is work with Mr. Sultanic's office on a finalized agreement. This is just a proposal. We need an agreement in place in order for the board to approve any movement forward in regards to the proposal as such.
I guess I'm still going back to you, Mr. Shield. Are you going to be comfortable making decisions like this? Because it's going to be your neck on the chopping block.
Well, I would think that any decisions would be brought back to the board, and I'm happy to answer to you guys, and I've done that, and those decisions would ultimately be done by you guys. Change orders and whatnot come to you guys first. No, not minimal ones. Hopefully we don't have too many. That's what I'd like. I want none.
Okay, well, we will plan on bringing that back. If you can get that updated proposal to me, and I'll get it to the board, and then we'll bring up an agreement in a couple of weeks.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Lynch.
Mr. Brophy, deduct change orders are sometimes helpful to see.
Yeah, but I don't see too many. We did, I'm sorry, we did get one. We got, what, 300,000 on the bathrooms? Yes. We did get, that's good to bring up.
Mrs. Denicola, if you can go through item F for the board, the 24-25 IDA agreement with the BCIU, and just explain some of the dynamics of this. Oh, I'm sorry, I did skip this. Sorry about that. So, Mr. Fight, welcome you, our Director of Technology, to talk a little bit about some IT capital projects as well.
Hello, everybody. How are you? I have just 4 projects that are being proposed for the 25-26 school year. Two of those projects revolve around the replenishment of student devices, both at the high school and the Chromebook devices at our 5th grade level. These projects are factored into my yearly budget from an accounting standpoint in full on the Windows devices, and from the Chromebook perspective, I did allocate the finance charge. After speaking with Mrs. DeNicola, she did make the recommendation that we go forward with a proposal where we outright purchased the Chromebooks and continued with the fair market lease value on the Windows laptops. The advantages of that are that after we get our 4 years of service out of the Dell laptops for our 9th through 12th grades, we will then be able to dispose of the items back to the financing company. Not only will that save us money in the overall cost, because the overall 4 years of the lease is less than the outright purchase cost, it also saves us from disposal fees at the end of that 4-year time period. The Chromebooks would be served at a minimum of 5 years of service, and this is part of the replenishment plan that we have developed after we went to one-to-one devices back in 2019. The original Windows proposal was back in 2023. The second project that you see on your screen there is for our data center replenishment. Our data center has now, the hardware inside of our data center has been marked end of support, end of life by the manufacturer. It is over 5 years old. It is time for replenishment. When you replenish new servers, you are able to streamline your architectural processes, and you're also able to ensure the latest in security and update features. That project would be totaled, and I apologize, I don't have this slide and I can't read that far, but that would be financed through a technology fund purchase. The last item on the agenda, or did I just go backwards? I apologize. Can someone tell me what's the third slide? Is that the third? Our third project is a switching project, which is E-rate eligible. E-rate is a federal program that allows us to utilize federal dollars in determining infrastructure needs through networking. That would be the total replenishment of all of our switching devices in all of our buildings. That would be behind the scenes infrastructure that allows us to deliver wireless and connected network connectivity throughout the entire building. That is an E-rate funded purchase, so the figures there would be 50% federally funded, 50% district funded. Does anyone have any questions regarding those projects?
So just to recap the financial impact, the Dell Latitude laptops, the proposal would be that we would lease those at a cost of $95,750 per year. That would be as part of the IT department's general fund budget. The Chromebooks would be purchased outright. That would be purchased through the Technology Reserve Fund, and that would be a total of $158,480. The server refresh, again, would be Technology Reserve, and that would be $149,126.96. The closet infrastructure would be a total estimated cost of $701,436.88, but we anticipate $343,657.02 would be funded by E-rate, as it is an E-rate eligible project, and the total cost to the district then would be $357,779.87. We would not move forward with that project until we've received our approval for the E-rate funding.
The Chromebooks, what do we do with them after the 5 years?
After the 5 years, they're basically outdated and unusable, so we would get the most life out of them, and then we would replenish them.
How do we get rid of them?
We
Is
would
there a cost?
They're electronic disposal.
Yep.
There's various fees that are in line with that, but they are minimal.
That would be figured in as part of the IT operating budget each year. And what these purchases do is help sustain the technology within the district and make sure we have an established replenishment cycle. During the pandemic, a lot of technology was put in place in the district with all the changes within administration. There was no real plan for how do we replenish this and in what kind of cycle do we replenish all of this technology so teachers and students have the best tools that they need. So this really is a step forward in making sure that we're doing that continual planning, that we have established these replenishment cycles and that we're following that replenishment cycle.
And can you refresh my memory, because I'm not 100% sure, is there about $8 million in that capital projects for IT?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. White. Okay, jumping down to item F. Ms. Denicola, can you just give a quick review of the IDA agreement with the BCIU?
So annually, we receive IDA 611 funds. Those are funds to support special education of our students. For 2024-25, our allotment is $1,417,244. This allotment is established by a state formula based upon poverty levels and identified students within our district. That's a decrease of about $38,000 from the prior year. These funds are utilized to fund mostly our special education teachers and other special education needs of our students. So this would be placed on the March 25th agenda for the board's approval and acceptance.
That says 24-25.
It would be 24-25.
Okay.
Yep.
And under item H, just our solicitor appointment, you can see they're listed, and you have that contract in front of you, some of the specifics in the annual appointment for the fiscal year for 25-26 for Fox Rothschild. And I did skip over, jumping around a little bit here. All right, so we'll go back. So that was item H. We'll go back to item G. And again, this is an annual contract that Boyertown School District and the YMCA have had for a number of years. This contract does include a 3% increase from last year. There are 4 buildings that you see inside of that contract: Boyertown, Gilbertsville, New Hanover, and Washington, that do provide both morning and afternoon before and after care. So just a reminder to the board, some of the partnerships that we do have with the Y. Our high school swim team does utilize the Boyertown Y for team practices and home meets at no cost. Our youth and government engages approximately 60 middle and high school youths involved in our model governments. The YMCA does also host lifeguarding courses for students seeking PE credit, and they do partner with us around safety around water and serves the district's entire 3rd grade class. So we do encourage this partnership with the YMCA, and this is a contract that involves before and after care for next year. Okay, item H, we already reviewed that, our solicitor appointment. We do have 3 trips for your consideration. Those 3 trips include our youth and government, as I just shared. In addition to that, we also have our senior class trip for 2026. In fact, we had a successful trip that just returned last week. And our math counts state competition for our middle school West students. And you can see there's some of the specifics and descriptions for each of those. So we do recommend your consideration of those, and we'll bring forward that at our March 25th for your vote. Item J, Washington Elementary School donation. Mrs. Dorenzo, if Mr. Dorenzo is still present here, if you want to step forward and just speak for a moment to the Washington donation and its mini grant program.
So Mrs. Sartor, who you met earlier, took the initiative to write a grant to provide some literature that goes with all of the math standards. Students have the opportunity to dig deeper into text with math focus. Teachers use the text as a mentor text as they introduce math lessons, and it really sparks interest in the kids. We have a wonderful book room here, so Mrs. Sartor worked to kind of tag the books by grade level. Teachers can take them into their classrooms, put them in a center so that kids can enjoy them and really, expand their inquiry, their math inquiry through the use of literature. So we're really excited to be able to, take advantage of the grant that Tara wrote for us. So does anybody have any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Dorenzo. And item K, I'm going to invite Mr. Maori, Middle School East Principal, to speak about the bear donation.
Thank you very much. We have the description in the board agenda, the purpose of this bear to add to our parade of bears that's around Boyertown. Unfortunately, the district lost a valued member a few weeks ago. Robin Sowers passed away. She touched the lives of many, both at Bash and at Junior High East, Middle School East. So in honor of her memory, family, friends, local community members have been putting together and acknowledging a commitment to purchasing a large-sized bear that would be placed in our library in honor of her. We think this is a fitting recognition and memorial for her and her service. It would come at, again, all expenses coming from the donations. There would be little to no upkeep needed. This would be indoors and housed in our library. So we hope when it comes up for a vote next the meeting, you'll approve that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Maori. Any questions? So just to recap real quick, and I do appreciate the board's patience as we work through a lot of items here, a lot of good things, a lot of things that we wanted to inform you of as well. So item A, planetarium. We will bring some information back to you as we meet again with Ms. Town and an itemized list of some things for your consideration as we move forward. Both the Steels and the Steels Mystery Science presentation will be bringing a motion forward at our March 25th meeting for your consideration of approval. Item C, the facilities overview, and item D, the IT capital projects. Both of those are going to be captured inside of the budget for 25-26. So all of those items are really going to be inside for your consideration inside the budget. The proposal for design, as stated, we will bring an agreement forward for our next meeting. The IDA agreement with the IU will be formed into a motion at the 25th meeting. The Boyertown YMCA will be brought forward as a motion, as well as the solicitor appointment. The 3 overnight trips, as well as the 2 donations, will all be formed into motions for the March 25th meeting for your consideration. So that takes us down to reports.
Mr. Brophy, BCIU report.
A couple things here I think Dr. David Heiser already has, which is the Ann Sullivan Awards. You're aware of that, so should be set for that one.
Yes, we will do that.
Okay, good. And also the Camp Connect. You're aware of the Camp Connect. It's a bereavement camp that's run each year, and there's 2 different dates for it. It's a pretty good program. I think you have all the information.
We just received that this morning, and we'll be getting that out to our Director of Student Services for her to share with the families that she connects.
Good program,
Thank
something worthwhile to go to. The next thing I have is there's the federal news and the state news, and I am not going to read you all 100 state news and state bills that are going out, but just to try and give you a flavor. For the federal news, there's only 20. And there's really only one that I would think that would bring to your attention, which would be the enforcement of the 2020 Title IX rule, which could possibly affect us, that moves things back from the 2023 or 2024 back to the 2020, so that could have an effect. There's like 100 state ones. I'm just going to go over a couple that I think might affect us or might show us some things that are coming our way we need to think about. They usually open up applications for dual credit innovation grants. I know we have a dual credit program. I don't know, they opened the application on January 13th. There's like $14 million out there. This year, it's February 10th, it was over, so if we didn't get anything out there, we missed it, but something to keep our eyes open for next year. That's the dual credit program is a real good program, and it helps kids get through, helps them get going. Daylight saving times become a big issue. I think you might be aware of that. There's one to prohibit it and one to permanent. So I'm not sure which of those two laws is going to go through, but just so you're aware that is moving forward. So daylight saving time is once again becoming a hot button issue, which affects the schools, because our kids will be coming in school or leaving in darkness or light, whatever. The vaccine consent for minors rule is coming out. That's something also could affect us. Then we start the sports. We've got the Fairness in Women's Act that's coming out that could have, could have some effect on us with our sports programs. For board members, there's increasing signature requirements for school board candidates. That's not coming out for this one, but it's out there. They want to go from 10 to 100 for the school boards. Yeah, cross-filing for school board petition circulation or something. So there's more coming out. The point is, there's things happening with school board elections that you need to know about. I don't know about the hearing aid test for school bus drivers. I think that might be to try and help them keep their sanity. So I'm not going to go over that one too much. There's a lot of things around taxes, optional property tax freeze, Homestead and Farming Act property tax relief, school property tax elimination constitutional amendment, senior property tax freeze. Just so you guys are aware that there may be some upheaval over the next couple of years. Here's one we did have the discussions that moved our starting date back on our school days. Well, here's the next thing: require school years begin after Labor Day. That's being pushed forward, House Bill 370. Like I say, these are only bills that are out there. There's nothing that says any of them are going to pass. It's just that they're in process and they have sponsors. Also requiring background checks for school board candidates. So they're definitely doing a lot on school board elections. Let's see what else. Once again, Fairness and Women's Sports Act. So that's coming there. Senior property tax freeze. So another bill on that. So I guess what I'm trying to say, I think that's all. But what I'm trying to say is there's a lot of bills and a lot of things moving through Congress right now, either sponsored or actually moving. That could have large effects on us moving forward. So we have to be aware of that, and especially as we move forward, think of how that's going to affect us. That's it.
I have a question, Mr. Brophy. Where can you get that summary, on the BCIU, or is there a link for that?
Yeah, so we will be, it's now been introduced to the board members. It was introduced to superintendents this morning, so it'll be shared as a file in the weekly report to the board. So you'll be receiving that.
Okay.
It's an interesting document. Yeah. It's much less than the other one I get. It's about that thick with all the bills, which I'm sure you have that.
Mr. Updegrove, BCTC.
The only thing I have is the fact that we're still working on our budget at the BCTC. That's it.
Okay.
So it does take us down to the committee work presentations. So as we had discussed at one of our special meetings back in February was an update to our 006 policy with regard to meetings. And you can see that attached. If you take your attention to page 10 of that document, that's where the changes were made. They're bolded inside of that, and it's under the heading of committee meetings, in which the paragraph now changes to standing committee meetings will be scheduled 1 hour before each committee of the whole and voting meeting, with the 4 committees rotating every other month. Committee meeting may be called at any time, and then the rest of that language is the same, along with the bolded in consultation with superintendent or his or her designee in consultation with committee chair, prepare all agendas for the meetings. So it was something we had discussed at that special meeting, and updating that language with regard to that. We wanted to bring this draft back to you for your consideration, and if so, move it to a first read at our March 25th legislative meeting. And then also 815.1, Mrs. Landis and her team and Mr. Feit had presented at that same special meeting in regard to the use of generative artificial intelligence and all of the components that we had discussed and the discussion that we had there. Those changes were made throughout the document that you can see there in its draft form. Whether or not they're crossed out or bolded are all the changes to what we were directed to make with inside that document as we discussed at that meeting. So I'd ask for your consideration to look through that. Again, what we're looking to do is bring both of these policies back to the March 25th meeting for a first read. That's all I have, Ms. Panarello.
That brings us to public comment period number 1. No one has signed up. So right now I'll be looking for the approval of the February 25th, 2025 Board of School Director meeting minutes.
Zawada moves.
I'll second.
Mrs. Scott.
Yes.
Mr. Brad Updegrove.
Yes.
Mr. Roger Updegrove. Mr. Zawada.
Yes.
Mr. Brophy.
Yes.
Mrs. Kratz.
Yes.
Ms. Nyman. No. Mr. Pinarello.
Yes.
Motion carries.
That takes us to our superintendent's itemized agenda. We have one item for your consideration and vote this evening. That is our personnel. So we're looking for a motion this evening to approve.
Panarello moves. Ms. Nyman.
Yeah, this gets confusing because we have somebody rescinding that just took it for the payroll. What is going on there? Can you explain?
The individual that we offered the position to was supposed to come in and do pre-employment paperwork, sent a text saying that she was not going to accept the job. She accepted a job at another employer. I'd like to just take a minute. I don't know how many of you. Oh, go ahead.
Let the vote go through. Let the vote go
Sure.
through.
Mrs. Scott.
Yes.
Mr. Brad Updegrove.
Yes.
Mr. Roger Updegrove.
Yes.
Mr. Zawada.
Yes.
Mr. Brophy.
Yes.
Mrs. Kratz.
Yes.
Ms. Nyman. Mr. Pinarello.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. I don't know how many of you are aware, but the Boyertown community lost a member of the high school staff on Friday, Kate DeBlasi-Kelchner, who had been with the district since 2023. She lost her battle to cancer on Friday. So her services are Thursday evening at Allman Funeral Home in Reading.
Would you like to make another introduction?
Yes, absolutely. And, you know, Dr. David Heiser already had spoken about Jen Joyce. Jen was with the district for 19 years. We are sad to see her go, but we know that she has a wonderful opportunity in front of her. And we have in attendance this evening a very patient individual, Jacqueline Balanca. Is here. She will be our new K-8 curriculum supervisor. Jacqueline has 25 years in public ed. So through the interview process, through 2 interviews, she was able to obviously rise to the top and was a clear candidate for this role. So we are extremely happy to have her joining our team.
Great. Welcome. No one signed up for public comment period number 2, so at this time we'll go to board comment. Mr. Updegrove.
I want to thank the people here that put this presentation on, and it was very good, and thank you.
Ms. Nyman. Ms. Kratz. Ms. Scott.
I'll make it brief. I know we're tired. I just wanted to thank Dr. David Heiser and Mr. Stout for the tour last week. It was really a wonderful time. I would recommend that if school board members don't get the chance to get into the classroom, and if you're available, I know work schedules and things like that get in the way, I would recommend it. It was great interacting with the kids and engaging with them, and they're working on their projects, and they were very welcoming. You know, I thought they might be a little shy with board members and things. Oh, no. If you need a hug, go to pre-K, and you will get as many hugs as you want. And the project for Shark Tank, I hope that at some point we know who won, because they insisted that each group insisted they talk to everyone to find out which logo do you like, what do you think about this, what do you think about, so the kids were really engaged with that too. So it was a lot of fun, and it was a long day. I was exhausted, but it was well worth it. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Mr. Brophy.
Quick, want to thank Washington Elementary School for the presentation. It is amazing what the kids do. I did the book reading last week, and it blew me away. So we do have a lot of positives going on. I would like to thank Dr. David Heiser. The surveys that we're starting to put out and the responses we're getting is really opening a lot of people's eyes. And you know, my 4 years on the board, we never did stuff like that. So I hope we keep it going and even share more of some of the answers that people have given, and just to show the rest of the school district that we are starting to head on the right track. So again, thank you.
With a meeting this short, I wouldn't dream of adding more comments to it. So I'll be giving it to Dr. David Heiser for the upcoming announcements.
Okay, thank you. In 2 weeks, we will be hosting the March 25th legislative meeting. That will be back at the Education Center and speaking about a number of those motions that I mentioned earlier. On April 8th, we will have our next committee of the whole, in which we already have a pretty full agenda already building. So again, pack a snack for April 8th. We have lots of things to talk about, including a lot of finance.
Motion to adjourn. Meeting adjourned.